Hello and welcome to this new video. Today I want to show you something that I came across during my research about the Mountain of Anubis in Abydos in Egypt. And here I found something really interesting. Let's go right into it. Here we have Egypt and the Nile River, and here is the Mountain of Anubis, which is a very important place for ancient Egypt. And here in Abydos there are many interesting structures, from pre-dynastic tombs with signs of sophisticated engineering and no inscriptions. Then we have these Middle Kingdom tombs with this typical Egyptian design and paintings. Then we have the Osirion here in Abydos, which in my opinion could be also a pre-dynastic structure with these gigantic megalithic granite blocks and this mysterious precision. And then we have also pre-dynastic burial sites, and some of them are really the earliest known in Egypt. Also, the youngest pyramid of Egypt is located here in Abydos, which is the pyramid of Mohs. And this pyramid is totally collapsed now, which is also interesting. It's one of the most destructed pyramids, but also the youngest. Here in Abydos, there is constantly new excavations going on. They keep on finding new structures. And in 2013, they were excavating some of these Middle Kingdom tombs at the base of the Mountain of Anubis. And they found a massive monolithic quartzite box. And this box is like crude from the outside, and inside it is very sophisticatedly carved. The box is around 9 feet long, 4 feet wide and 4.3 feet deep, and it weighs around 60 tons. This is really crazy, 60 tons. To put this in perspective, this equals approximately 30 SUVs or 40 small cars. And it is made of quartzite. It's made of red-purple quartzite. And this box is massive. And what's also interesting, it hasn't been found in a tomb or in some kind of temple structure or whatever. It has just been found buried in the sand around 100 meters away from one of these undecorated tombs that, in my opinion, could be also pre-Egyptian. It obviously had been moved from somewhere. Inside this box, the surfaces are perfectly flat and polished, and the corners are carved very precise. They have a tolerance of 0.5 degrees. And the official explanation is that these recesses that have been carved into this box, that they were like receptacles for the royal sarcophagus and the canopic chest. You know, this typical Egyptian sarcophagus, it was meant to be placed in there. And then this other small recess, there they would have placed the canopic jar, which is like a container that contains the mummified organs of the king or the pharaoh. So that's the idea. And then they would have covered it with the lid. And archaeologists have tried to replicate or to understand how this has been carved. And they came to the conclusion that it would have taken several years to carve this with the tools that the ancient Egyptians had. And this is without accounting for the logistics of moving it. So the surfaces are perfectly flat. This thing weighs around 60 tons. And what's also interesting, there are several tomb structures nearby. And one of them is called the Tomb S10. And this tomb was already excavated in 1901 by British archaeologists. And at that time, they documented already that there was a massive quartzite lid inside this Tomb S10. And he described it as a large quartzite block carefully dressed from the inside. And after that, nobody talked about it again. And exactly 100 years later, in the year 2002, they re-excavated this Tomb S10, and this lid was still perfectly intact in there, and they found it, and they were able to conclude that this lid matches the box. And the box has been found around 100 meters away, buried in the desert sand. This lid, the weight of it is estimated around 18 to 20 tons. So the entire box would have weighed around 80 tons. What is also interesting, there are only 2 locations where we find quartzite in Egypt. One is located at Aswan, which is around 140 miles south of Abydos. And there is another quarry called el-Ahmar, which translates to the Red Mountain. And this quarry is located around 260 miles to the north of Abydos, near Cairo. And they were able to analyze this quartzite box by looking at the crystals and the grains of the stone, and it matches the crystal structure of the quartzite from el-Ahmar, which is near Cairo. So this means that the ancient Egyptians have transported this 80-ton monolith more than 540 kilometers or 340 miles upstream against the current on the Nile, which is a crazy achievement. And here we have to ask ourselves also, why did they not use the quartzite from Aswan, which is much closer to Abydos, and they could have traveled downstream? Maybe the answer lies exactly in what the scientists found now. Maybe the crystal structure was what they were looking for. And here I'm thinking also about the piezoelectric effect. The piezoelectric effect is very strong in quartz, and this quartzite stone is almost pure quartz. And there are many theories around the question why they have used so much red granite, for example, in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. And many scientists believe that one answer could be the piezoelectric effect, because granite also contains around 70 to 80% of quartz. But this quartzite is almost pure quartz. So meaning these effects are even stronger in the quartzite. And also we have to mention here that this quartzite is even harder than the red granite from Aswan. And it is also much harder to carve. Yeah, I have done some research on that. And I'm reading here a little bit what I noted down here. There is this Mohs hardness scale, and the red granite from Aswan, depending on the source where you look, has a hardness of 6 to 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. The quartzite has a hardness of 7 to 8, and it contains more than 90% quartz. Quartzite ranks higher than granite on the hardness scale. While red granite from Aswan could be shaped with persistence and abrasives, quartzite, almost pure silica, is a different beast entirely. It's dense, brittle, and glass-like. One wrong strike can shatter it. Yet the quartzite boxes at Abydos show perfectly flat surfaces, sharp inner corners, and a polish like glass. Interesting. I also found out that quartzite wears down abrasives way faster than red granite. You know, the idea is that they shaped the red granite and the quartzite by using dolerite pounding stones and abrasives like sand. And I was able to find out that quartzite wears down the abrasives around 30 to 40% more than the granite. Meaning, red granite is already very, very difficult to carve, but this quartzite is an entirely different beast. And then we have to ask ourselves also, how did they transport this on the Nile? Because so far, the largest ship that has been found from ancient Egypt is the Khufu Ship. Yeah, the Khufu Ship is recently making headlines because they transported it last week to the new Egyptian museum. But this is, until today, the largest ship that we found from ancient Egypt. And yeah, this is really an interesting question, how you transport this 80-ton box on this ship here, 540 kilometers upstream on the Nile River. If you haven't watched our last video about the Geopolymer experiment, I highly recommend it to you. I will link it here, because in our last video we explain how the ancient Egyptians might have been able to melt granite and to cast geopolymer stones. Here I show a short video from Marcel Foti from his Twitter account, where he basically proves that it is possible to melt granite with simple means that were theoretically available to the ancient Egyptians. Check it out. This is red granite from Aswan that he's melting there. And I guess this would be also possible with quartzite. I will link also Marcel Foti's X account so you can look into this into detail. Check out also his book, The Natron Theory. Here he explains in detail how the ancient Egyptians have melted granite. Yeah, check out our last video with the geopolymer experiment. This could be the answer to many questions in Egypt. Yeah, maybe they have poured it like a concrete. This would have saved them so much time, and also it would have made the transport much easier, because they could have just transported it in bags, you know, in powderized quartzite stone. And they could have transported it with horses or camels through the desert, and then they just cast it right on site. So check out our last video about this theory. Yeah, and also nearby here in Abydos, I found this also very interesting. They found one of the oldest large-scale breweries in Egypt. And this brewery is dating to the first dynasty, to Pharaoh Narmer. And here we have to ask ourselves also, how is this possible that they were running such operations already in the first dynasty? This industrial complex was capable of brewing thousands of liters of beer, suggesting an organized, sophisticated society right from the very beginning of Egyptian history. The official story is that before the first dynasty, there was the dynasty 0 where everything started. But before that, there was basically no proper civilization there. Only hunter and gatherers living in small communities, wearing animal pelts or something. And I have a hard time to understand how this is possible, that in this early stage of Egyptian history, they were running this kind of operations and they were building this kind of crazy structures. These are very important questions in my opinion. We will soon do a separate video on this. There are also many more structures here in Abydos that we have to look at. Yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed this short video about the mysterious quartzite box of Abydos. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and if you like to support our work, you can find the PayPal link in the description. Thank you so much for your time and see you in the next video. Ciao!